Hello and welcome to another Fantasy Premier League video. My name is Steve and today we're taking a look at my team selection and the two new assets that you can see on screen that I have brought in for Gabriel and Rashford, my reasons for holding Pedro, and the risk of making early transfers with a flagged Maddison. But before we jump into it, if you're not already a subscriber of this channel, please consider subscribing. It really does help the channel out and I appreciate your support. So, yesterday morning, New Zealand time, I was taking a look at the price changes and Gabriel was set to drop in price and Foden, one of my targets, was set to rise in price. So if either of these two price changes occurred, I would have been out of funds to make these transfers. So this is a 101 million pound team at the moment. So the squad has gone up by 1.0 million, but I had exact funds to go Rashford down to Foden and then Gabriel up to Trippier. Now, I thought it through and decided that I definitely was going to want Trippier from game week 5 and onwards, and I was kind of forced into getting him a little bit earlier because if I was going to remove Gabriel for, say, a downgrade to someone like a Rico Henry, I would then be looking to upgrade another defensive player. Wouldn't have been Chilwell. It would have either been Estupiñán or Rico Henry. And with the way that Estupiñán was playing, I did not foresee that I would be selling him anytime soon. I'll probably hold him through his tricky fixtures against Newcastle and Manchester United in the following 2 weeks after the West Ham fixture. And so I didn't really want to waste a couple of transfers going down to Henry and then all the way back up to Trippier in a couple of weeks' time, as there was potentially some other things that I will need to be doing in my squad. And so I decided that the best play was to jump on Trippier a little bit earlier and execute the transfers at about 11 AM New Zealand time. Now, thankfully, I did do that when I decided to do it, because within 2 hours time Gabriel had dropped to 4.9 million and Foden had gone up to 7.6 million. So making the earlier transfers meant I could actually make those moves, and I've actually also locked in the extra 0.2 million into my squad, which does become very helpful later on in the season. Now, as you can see, Maddison is still currently flagged, and so I am running a little bit of a risk in going early with a flagged Maddison because my bench is incredibly light. I've got Cabore, who will be the most likely man coming in off my bench. I think I'm going to leave him first bench here if Maddison is in fact out. This is assuming that we get no news about Maddison. If Maddison is only out for 1 week, so if we do find out that he's out, but he's likely to be back the following week, I think I'm still just going to hold Maddison and play Cabore, even though it's a tricky fixture away to Chelsea. And the main reason for that is because when I bought Maddison into the squad, it was actually for these 3 fixtures of Bournemouth away, Burnley away, and Sheffield United at home. 2 promoted teams, and Bournemouth, who struggled a little bit last season. I think Maddison could do quite well, and he is a little bit of a differential at 13.6% owned in the game. So I am running a little bit of a risk by going early and holding on to Maddison. But if I do find out that, say, Maddison has got a serious injury and he's out for a few weeks, then I will look at taking a hit to downgrade him. But I am a little bit unsure as to exactly who I might move to at this point in time. I'm really just hoping that he's going to be all good. He was seen leaving the stadium on crutches with a protective boot on, but it sounds like it's a foot injury. So doesn't sound like it's his ankle or his knee or any of the muscles in his leg, which would be a little bit more concerning. If it's just a foot, I mean, a lot of footballers can just play through a foot injury. I did more than enough of that during my career playing football, and I'm hoping that he will be fit and ready for this pretty lucrative fixture away to Bournemouth. And Rashford out. This is also a little bit of a risky trade because Rashford is owned by 45% of the game and has an amazing fixture against Nottingham Forest this week. Is it at home? I can't quite remember. Yeah, so it is Nottingham Forest at home. But then the following week, he's away to Arsenal, and then the week after that at home to Brighton. And given the way that Manchester United are playing at the moment, irrespective of how Rashford does against Nottingham Forest, I think I would have been selling him next week anyway. I do not fancy his chances against Arsenal or Brighton. And so I've just decided to go 1 week early. There's every chance, based on the way that Manchester United are playing, that they just blank completely against Forest. They could even lose the game. Of course, it is one of the easier fixtures, and so this could be the game that Manchester United turns it all around. But considering I did need the funds in order to save myself from making 2 transfers with dealing with Gabriel, I've just decided to go early. So if Rashford does go big against Nottingham Forest, it's really going to hurt, assuming that Foden doesn't match him for whatever Foden manages to pull out in this match. But 45% of the game with Rashford in their team is a bit of a scary transfer out. So there's a bit of risk coming into the squad. Now, Foden in. I was looking to start the season with Phil Foden, and he was in all of my preseason drafts right up until the Community Shield, where I had picked him as a starter in that match. It turns out that he was benched in that fixture against Arsenal, and so at that point I decided there's no point risking starting the season with Foden. Let's do a bit of a switch up and see how the season progresses. Now, since then, Foden has started the first 2 matches, did really well in both games, pulled some points in last week, didn't pull in any points, I don't think, in game week 1. But this run of the next 5 fixtures for Man City is sensational. Sheffield United away, Fulham at home, West Ham away, Nottingham Forest at home, and then Wolves away. I do not think that Haaland alone is enough coverage from that Man City attack, as they could easily go out and score 3 or 4 goals in every single one of these fixtures. Now, even if Haaland is the man that bags up all the goals and comes away with, let's say, an average of Man City scoring 3 per game across those 5 game weeks, let's say, I don't know, Haaland comes away with 10 goals or something ridiculous, there will still be a couple of goals floating around in the rest of the squad and a whole bunch of assists up for grabs. And I think the most likely 2 attackers in that Man City squad, assuming that they both continue starting, is Phil Foden and Julian Alvarez. Now, Alvarez is obviously a forward with Foden in the midfield. I've been watching Foden very closely across pre-season and loved what I've been seeing. He was a great player last year. He just looks like he's just growing as a player this season, and I really want to have him in my squad. He is known for going on little bits of runs. When he gets a run of starts, he quite often comes away with a whole bunch of FPL points, and I would love to roll the dice at a shot of having Foden in the squad and hopefully picking up a haul or 2 in the next 5 fixtures. Now, I think he'll probably start I would like to say 3 to 4 games of the next 5 fixtures. I'm really hoping that if he does get benched, that it's not for the Sheffield United or Fulham games. The fact that he was benched in the Community Shield match, I think, is more an indication from Pep that he doesn't think that Foden is quite ready for the responsibilities that he is asking of Foden in the middle of the park in this quite fluid midfield that Man City are running. And so the fixtures in game weeks 8, 9 and 10, away to Arsenal, home to Brighton and away to Manchester United, look a little bit more dubious in terms of starts for Phil Foden. But I'm hoping Pep gives Foden a consistent run of game time to see if he can come up to speed with whatever it is that Pep needs to see out of him in order to start playing him in those more difficult fixtures. And the other main concern, well, seems to be a concern out in the community, but not so much a concern for myself, is Joao Pedro, who I am holding. When I did make the 2 transfers yesterday, this was before the news of Enciso coming out as injured and injured for a few weeks. And so I had actually already assumed that Enciso was going to be fit and available for this game against West Ham at the weekend, and I was still happy to hold Joao Pedro for this fixture. And the main reasons for that is whenever a new player comes into the team, especially if they come in quite late and don't have a lot of pre-season, you will see that the managers will bed them into the squad a little bit slowly, just to make sure that he's still looking after the players that have been in the team for a long time and that he's worked with closely and who knows their roles quite well. It's pretty, I guess, disheartening for a player to just see a new player get bought and take a spot straight away, and that's it, you're out of the team forever. It's not a great way to manage a squad of players. But I thought there would be a couple of benchings for Pedro in the first, 5 to 6 game weeks as Joao Pedro comes up to speed, gets used to the players around him and the way that De Zerbi likes to play football. And so when I brought him in at the beginning of the season, I had made my mind up that I fully expect Pedro to get benched, and I was more than happy to take 1 or 2 benchings in the first 5 to 6 game weeks if it meant that I could have Salah in my squad. And so he's now been benched, something that I was expecting. I am not going to change my plan just because it has in fact happened. I am going to continue to hold him through. Now, of course, the Enciso injury does boost Pedro's prospects for starting week on week. Enciso had an amazing game last weekend, and when he does come back into the team, it will be interesting to see how the roles switch. I suspect that Pedro may end up taking Danny Welbeck's spot in the number 9 role up front with Enciso sitting in behind him, but what we will probably find is that it's actually quite a fluid attacking structure at Brighton, where we may see Pedro in the 10, Pedro in the 9, Enciso in the 10, Enciso on the wing. We could even see Welbeck out on the wing, I guess. I mean, there's a lot of places that these players could play, but I'm still holding firm to the belief that Joao Pedro, most expensive player that Brighton have ever outlaid some funds for, they are going to try and work him into the team as best they can. Now, there were some comments from De Zerbi about Joao Pedro, and his comments were that he wants to see Joao Pedro work harder when he loses the ball. And although that's actually a pet hate of mine from any footballer who loses the ball and just throws his arms up in the air and looks like he's pissed off that he lost the ball, and you want to see those players turn around and sprint after the player that's taken the ball off him and work his arse off to get that ball back. But even though De Zerbi has said that, he has to give him a chance to be out on the pitch to show that he is willing to listen to De Zerbi and actually take instruction. And so I wouldn't put that down as a reason for me to not put or not consider Pedro or actually get rid of him out of my team. It's just a comment from De Zerbi that he needs to work harder. Now, if we do see Joao Pedro start and lose the ball and then not work hard to get the ball back, that's when I'll start getting worried, because that's basically a clear message from the player that he isn't listening to his manager, potentially doesn't even think the manager's ideas are worthwhile, and that will very quickly find him benched more often than he should if he falls out of favour with the manager. If he's playing against West Ham, loses the ball and just works like crazy to get it back, that will earn a spot probably in De Zerbi's heart and in most managers out there to see, players actually taking information on ball and be willing to work for the manager and the rest of the team. I'll just quickly read out the team for those of you without the visuals. I probably should have done that at the start, but I've got Johnston starting in net away to Brentford. New man Trippier at home to Liverpool. Not an ideal fixture, but Trippier does have quite a few routes to points through his attacking involvement. Estupinan at home to West Ham. Chilwell at home to Luton. Mbuemo at home to Crystal Palace. Maddison away to Bournemouth. Saka, who gave his penalty away to Odegaard, still a little bit angry about that, at home to Fulham. Fulham with the worst XG conceded over the first 2 game weeks. Hopefully Saka can go and get a whole bunch of points there. New man Phil Foden away to Sheffield United. Fingers crossed that he starts. Salah with a very tricky game away to Newcastle. Also another reason why I was a little bit, I wasn't thrilled with the fact that I had to bring in Trippier this week. I do not necessarily like my attackers playing my defenders, but it's only for 1 game week, and well, actually next week game week I will have some Brighton lads coming up against Trippier, but some of these moves have to be locked into your team for about 8 to 10 weeks, and Trippier is one of those players. Joao Pedro up front at home to West Ham, and Haaland away to Sheffield United with the captain's armband. Turner on the bench, Kabore first sub, Woodrow second sub. Is he getting any minutes? Oh, he got 2 minutes in game week 1. So that's great. And Baldock currently injured, but playing Man City at home, last on the bench. And that is it for my team selection video. So if you enjoyed this video and got something out of it, press the like button and consider subscribing. And if not, that's all good too. I appreciate your time watching. Cheers.